TechTales 82. This is July 18th, 2021 on a Sunday morning, 7:25 a.m. Later, this video goes public 8 a.m. ish. I might be a little late this morning. Normally on Sundays for quite a few weeks now at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I've had a live stream with Jason Laster from Tazewell, Tennessee, and we are tentatively still scheduled for today for 10 a.m. I don't have confirmation from him yet, but it's not overdue. I'll publish on my channel that scheduled live stream when I have confirmation. So if you go to my channel, youtube.com/LWTDB, on that screen right there, if it is confirmed and scheduled, the first video that you'll see on there will be showing your local time for that, which is what, 2.5 hours from this recording. So I'm going to change it up a little bit today. Yesterday I reported a network switch that I installed for the apartment building that I refer to as Golf. Today I'm going to show you pictures. I've kind of had my mind wondering if I could do pictures, show and tell of the work that I do. So I'm going to show pictures from that job and see how that goes. And depending upon how you react in the comments, then I'll try to do more of this. I could have done a little bit better job of these pictures, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I'm clicking over here to that scene to show the first picture. This is the wiring cabinet where I put in that new switch. This slot right here, this opening right here between that switch on the bottom and the switch on the top, that's where I put the new switch. Now I'm calling this the switch on the top. You might think, well, what about this switch up here? That's not a switch, that's the patch panel. And we're going to look closer at that in a little bit. So this box down here is a power supply, UPS. And then there's also one of those little horizontal surge protector / battery backup system laying horizontally here. I want to point out that there's a power cable going down the wall, and there's a power cable here. I think this one is for this alarm box unit. And then over here we have one of the two Wi-Fi devices, one of the Unify Wi-Fi devices. There's one in this office, which is the front office. It has the reception area and it has several desks where the staff work with the residents of this federally funded, government-assisted apartment building. People have to be disabled or on fixed income, have to be a certain age to qualify to come in here, and their assets has to be below a certain amount. There's another administration office where the executives are, and it also has its own Unify Wi-Fi device. So there's two of them, which you're going to see a little bit about that later. There's a key on the side of this cabinet so that door with the glass can close. They can lock it and put the key in a safe place. However, they don't do that. They keep the key here because we're not worried about anybody coming in and messing with the wiring cabinet, I should say. Now, this has a little outcropping of wall here. I think maybe that's some kind of a closet on the other side. I don't know. But there's this little gap between that wall and the right side of this cabinet. I can reach my hand back in there and release a clasp, and then this whole cabinet will swing out on a hinge. There's a hinge on this back left corner. The whole cabinet will swing out so that I can access this cabinet from the back side and deal with things there. So I did do that during this session, but I didn't get a picture of that. That's where I say I didn't do as good of a job with the pictures as I could have. Pressing the right arrow key to move on to the next picture. So here you can see the bottom switch is down here, and this is what I'm referring to this as the top switch. And then here's one patch panel, and then above it is the second patch panel. Between this bottom patch panel and the upper switch, you can see the Comcast router laying sideways right in here, kind of on this shelf. And then between these two switches, it's a little difficult to see. I'm going to try zooming in a moment, but you can see a little item back here, and you can see an item back here. These are the power injectors for the UniFi Wi-Fi device. So here I'm going to try to zoom in on that, and we do see a little different view of that in a different picture. So they're zooming in and then moving this a little bit. So here's, that doesn't quite look like the power injector. I think that might be one of the other devices, because there's alarm system in this cabinet, there's fire and smoke alarms, and there's possibly equipment for their IP phones and their IP camera system. So this one right here, let's see, that looks like a cable there. I'm thinking that might be the end of a power injector. Oh, that is one. That looks like the RJ45 plug right there going into something. Yeah, that is, because that's on the right side. So that is one of the power bricks and injectors. So see, ideally I would have given you a good picture of what that looks like too. So slap my hand for that. If you have positive reactions to pictures in general, I'll do a better job of this. Now, yesterday I described that when I put the new switch in, I cleared out a path of the Ethernet wires and then turned it lengthwise and slid it in and then maneuvered it. That's not true. As I look at these photos, I thought, wait a minute, that's not the way I did it. Do you see how these kind of loop like that? Well, I was able to bring my arm in from this right-hand side and reach in there and just pull all those wires out so that I could slip the new switch right in there. However, there were a few wires that were wired across in different paths. They're kind of hard to spot right now. I'm not going to try to do that, but I had to change what ports they were connected to or temporarily disconnect them so that I could slide the new switch in. So then let's move on to the next. We're going to get a closer view of these two switches. Here's the left side of the faulty switch. This is the switch that was periodically shutting itself down. And what they would do to fix that is, remember that power cord that I showed you that was going down the wall? They would unplug that from the wall outlet and wait for a minute and plug it back in. Now that's not where that switch was originally connected to. There's a power strip on the back of this cabinet that's not visible in these pictures. That was really kind of a really funky way to set it up. I was concerned about the age of that power strip, that it might be faulty, so I ran an extension down the wall so it could plug into an outlet, and that would give them a convenient way to be able to disconnect this switch. So this switch gives us a little bit of information. We can see here, since it has a 1000 megabits per second indicator, that's telling us that it is a gigabit switch. We got the model name here. We've got a button here that looks like it can switch to different functions for the lights. I never bothered with that, wasn't interested in doing that. Down here we can see the power over Ethernet gigabit switch below. This one doesn't give us any indication of being power over Ethernet, so I'm pretty sure that it's not. And this is the one that I suspected that it might be programmable, because when I had computers connected into a particular port, I wasn't able to access the copy machine. When I moved to a different port, I could. So I don't do programmable switches. None of my clients are have that level of needs or requirements. And I was concerned when I first started working on replacing this switch. I was concerned, if this is a programmable switch, I need to get in touch with whoever's responsible for this. So I contacted the alarm company, I contacted the video surveillance company, I contacted the IP phones company, and I contacted the the person that did the wiring and the person I thought installed the cabinet and that I thought installed the unified devices, he denied doing any of those. So it's a mystery as to who was doing what, except that the significant point I learned is that the alarm company and the cameras, they didn't need a programmable switch. So I still don't have an explanation about what that was about, why some of those ports appear to be programmed. So here's the gigabit Ethernet switch, the indicator lights on it. You might wonder why some of these are orange. The way that this switch works is these lights on the top two rows are for the odd number ports, 1, 3, 5 through 15, and the bottom two rows are for ports 2 through 16. So there's two lights for each port. So this port 1 has a green light and it has an orange light. So the green light is indicating that it is connected, and we can't see what that legend says under there. And if we had an orange light on that row, then that's indicating some kind of an error. And then this light is for the speed. So that green light right there would be the number 1000. We can't see it because that cable is blocking it. And we have, this is a flashing light. It's indicating that when the light is flickering, that's indicating activity, whether it's green flickering or orange flickering. And then over here we have orange is indicating a 10/100 speed link. So these ports are operating at a slower speed. So that probably means it's a computer that has an older Ethernet, or maybe the cameras operated at 100, or there's a copy machine that might be operating at a slower speed. I'm not really concerned about that because they don't do heavy file transfers that we would care about that. So same thing true down with this row. Then moving on to the next one. So here's Ethernet cables coming out of, I think, there's the power injector. So this is the bottom switch, the one that is functional, right? Am I saying that right? The power injectors, no, the power injectors are sitting on top of the good switch. So this is the good switch. So I'm pointing out here that the technician who wired this wrote in black marker what these wires are going to. I can't tell what those designations mean. I love it when they put an actual paper flag or something on the cables to indicate what they are. I'm sure if you know what you're expecting to see on those cables, that those make sense. And I don't know how the wall jacks are labeled. So these could be labeled to reflect the patch panel ports that they're plugged into, or they could be labeled to reflect the actual device that they're connected to out in the destination. Now let's come back here and look at where so that would have been this section of wires here, and I think that they don't actually, there's a packet of wires that don't actually go to the patch panel. See this sheath of wires going out, they don't actually go to the patch panel. So I think those are probably for additional cameras. They had one set of cameras in their original security camera installation, and then they had some additional cameras brought in. That might be what those are for. So those have to be for where they're going to. So they might not be going to a wall jack. They might be going straight to a camera installation somewhere. Then here I'm showing, we're getting a view of the Comcast router that's laying sideways in there. And this is another view of that. Now I'm going back to the prior picture and then forward to this picture. What I was actually taking these pictures for is I was trying to see which lights are lit. I wanted to find out which ports are currently connected to a device that's turned on. So like port 3 and port 5, those devices aren't on right now. So I know I have a little more freedom in utilizing those ports for different purposes, or for how I'm going to arrange the cables as I'm moving them. So this is more of the same. And then that's actually the last picture. So what I did in setting this up, let's come back to here. So I rearranged the cables a little bit so I could put my arm through here, lift these up, and slide the new switch into this opening. Now, I considered, do I really want to do that? Because you like to keep airflow between these devices. The new switch was promised to be cool running and quiet running. And I put my arm in here to feel how warm is this one on the bottom. I wasn't so concerned about the one on the top because I knew I was going to unplug it. And I knew the new switch going in wasn't supposed to generate much heat. But if I'm putting a switch on top of this one, I'm blocking airflow for that switch. So I was a little bit concerned about that. There's an open space below it. So that kind of makes me feel a little bit better. So anyway, I wound up concluding that I thought this was going to be okay. So when I put the new switch in, I first needed to supply internet signal to it. So here's this blue wire here is coming from the Comcast router and providing internet signal to here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this section. Right here. So this blue wire coming in from Comcast router, and then this green one coming out, it kind of looped around back there and then came back out and connected to this bottom switch. Let's zoom out a little bit. So what I did was, as I had the new switch in place, I connected this green Ethernet to one of the ports on the new switch, and then I temporarily put an Ethernet from this port to what I'll call the incoming port for the new switch. It didn't actually have a port labeled as that, but you can really plug them into any. I like to keep the internet signal on the right hand side of the switch. This switch has two dedicated ports for incoming signal and outgoing signal. The new switch did not have that. So that got internet signal live on all of the switches. And then I took these Ethernet cables one at a time and plugged them into the new switch. And I had to do a little rerouting of the cables sometime because when you unplug one from up here, you kind of have to reroute a little bit to make it pass through a little bit easier and kind of untangle a little bit as you're going along. So once I got this new switch completely up and running, I had all of these Ethernet ports emptied, so the only two ports that were still occupied on this switch was these two. So then I disconnected this Ethernet cable on both this side and on the, well, let's see, actually, no, I had that temporary cable between these two. So I removed the temporary cable and then moved the Comcast cable to what I'm calling the input port of the new switch. So that then these two switches were the only thing connected, and this one is completely disconnected. So right now that's the state of it. This switch is still there and still disconnected. I did not want to remove it on that visit because there's these other services going through there, and there's that what I think to be a programmed switch. What is it actually programmed to accomplish? So I was on high alert that I might get called back, that there's something not functioning right. That has not been the case. It's all up and running. So I will wind up removing that old switch, and then that'll be a completely done deal. So wow, 19 minutes to do show and tell. So let me know in the notes whether this is a useful thing or not. I hope that was useful. Have a great day. Catch you later. Goodbye.